Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Understable Discourse, and whew, it's a crazy one. Let's get into it. We got a few things to go over today. We're going to be looking at a quick review of the weekend that we just had not that long ago. We're going to take a look at the Cascade Challenge this upcoming weekend, which tees off tomorrow, and we're going to make our picks for Hold My Bag. First of all, if you're watching this episode, it's later than normal, it's on a different day than normal. Let me tell you something, this one was a bear to get out. I just recently had a bit of a schedule change at work. We're training some new people, and it has me going about 3.5 hours worth of driving every single day of the week, and it has thrown off my schedule like I have never thought possible. And I had a full episode recorded, and the file went corrupt. I have no idea. So we're here. We're doing it, and I appreciate everyone who's watching this video, and yeah, it's a good time. But I don't want to miss out on one for you guys. We want to talk about the Cascade Challenge. I think it's going to be a really, really fun event. But let's get into some of the events that happened this past weekend. So there wasn't a Pro Tour stop this past weekend, as we all know, but there were 3 top-tier events that did take place, including 2 Q Series events and a major for the Masters division. The Tim Selinsky United States Masters Championship went down this past weekend in New Mexico. It was Nate Sexton's first Masters major. Let me tell you something, the PDGA did everything they could to let us know. They rolled out the red carpet for Nate, and the field had some really solid players in it, including people like Daniel Polk, who I didn't even know this man existed, and I was just enamored watching him play. If you did not watch that event, go back and watch round 2 and just watch Daniel Polk dominate the course. It was a lot of fun watching him play. But they also had a couple other really, really solid players out there, like Kale Viska. They had Pete Ulibarri, who does really, really well at these events, and like Tall Paul Oman. But after a slightly disappointing first round for Sexton, that left us with Kale, Pete, and Daniel Polk and Tall Paul Oman on the lead card going into round 2. Not to be left out though, and going 3 straight hot rounds in a row, Nate Sexton eventually did go on to overtake the field and win in epic fashion. I'll admit I'm a little bit biased. Nate Sexton is like one of my all-time favorite pros. I remember the first ever video I ever watched on YouTube when it came to disc golf was that first ever starter pack challenge at De La Viega, the one where Eagle McMahon got a watermelon for Christmas. That was a good video. And speaking of De La Viega, another big event that happened, and possibly one of the biggest events in terms of like history of the sport, happened this past weekend at the Santa Cruz Masters Cup at De La Viega. Of course, number 1 on my bucket list to get out to at some point out in Santa Cruz. But it had major competitors like Gannon Burr, Nicholas Antala, Cole Rodolin, Alden Harris, Matty O, Isaac Robinson, Ezra Robinson, Aaron Gossage, Gavin Babcock, and Andrew Marweed. The field was stacked for this A tier, and can you really blame them for such a historical course like De La Viega? But after 3 close and very competitive rounds, it came down to a playoff between Niklas and Gannon, and in the end, Gannon ended up taking the win. The third and final big event that happened this weekend was at the Cosmic Open at Maple Hill. I was there. I played in the Cosmic Open, not in the professional side. I played on the amateur side. It was wet, it was sloppy, it was some of the worst conditions I have ever seen or probably ever played in. And honestly, shout out to my man Kyle Kern. If I wouldn't have had him on the bag, I don't know if I would have been able to do it. Handling all those discs, the umbrella, the towels, it was just crazy. At one point, you couldn't even see where you were throwing at because the fog covered up, even up to noon. At noon on hole 8, you couldn't even see where you were throwing to. It was insane. But the MPO field had some really solid competitors like Landon Brooks, who, if you don't know who that is, go back and watch the Glitch World Championships from a year ago. He's the little kid, I can't say little kid, he's the young guy who absolutely obliterated Simon during that round. You also had Harry Chase out there, who, in my opinion, could be, Rookie of the Year. Who knows? We'll see. And we had Jesse Longenecker, a college major winner who played an incredible collegiate major. If you haven't watched that, it's incredible. College disc golf is great. It doesn't get enough hype for what it really is. Go check out that over where you can. And then you got Lucas Oberholzer-Hess, who is probably one of the furthest throwers on the planet, especially if you say combined distance of forehand and backhand. I've seen it in person. It's like an attack helicopter flying over your head. It's extremely impressive. But the final pro tapping out the list and kind of signing up a bit last minute was Simon Lizotte, who, by the way, wasn't even playing with his real bag because that was left out in California for him. So he was playing with discs in his basement. And like I said, despite the worst conditions possible and finishing in absolute darkness, during the first round, Simon was the only member of the MPO field to finish under par, and eventually he ended up winning the event by a clean 10 strokes in a just dominant fashion. Well, that does it for the events this past weekend, but let's look ahead now to this weekend. Starting tomorrow, we have the Cascade Challenge, which, it first made a big scene on the Pro Tour as a Silver Series in 2023, where it became Washington State's first ever DGPT event, and the winners of that were Ricky Wysocki and Kat Murch. We're going to be hearing those names a little bit later, so hang on. But it also came back in 2024 as a Q Series event where both Deanne Carey and Nicolas Antela would take down the win. And this event kind of has a similar background to the Kansas City Wide Open, with both a Silver Series and a Q Series happening in its last 2 years. And in my opinion, other than the weather making it a bit difficult, I think the Kansas City Wide Open absolutely went off wonderfully. The course was fantastic, and I'm hoping that we have the same type of situation here going into this weekend. But looking at the course specifically, it takes place at Shelton Springs Disc Golf Course, which is a pretty well-loved venue in the Shelton, Washington area, and features a mix of wooded and open shots, so we kind of get to see a good variety of decision-making, shot shaping. And when you look at the overall layout, the FPO track is around 8,200 feet long and sits as a par 65, and the MPO layout is just over 9,700 feet and a par 64. And one of the great features of the course is the use of colored stakes they have on the property to indicate distances from the pin, and that's going to help speed up the pace of play, because when you can't get straight lines for your rangefinder, you need to check distances. Well, you can just look at the colored pin in front of you and see, oh, I am 300 feet out. Now, because this hasn't been a full Elite Series event, we don't have a lot to go off of when we look at the course. However, we do know that they made a significant number of changes to about 9 holes, including adding some new holes and freshening up some old ones, eliminating some of the holes that there were some complaints about last year. So I'm really curious to see how the course plays, but we're going to look at some specific holes real quick. And looking at hole number 1 to start out, normally, hole 1, we're trying to get all hyped up for it, and on paper, this kind of looks like another fluky par 3. It's not the longest par 3 in the world. It kind of feels like just some big hyzer. However, it really boasts a tough tee shot through kind of a small gap with a hard cut to the left, and if you push that line too aggressively, it's probably going to result in a bogey scramble for yourself, and depending on the wind, you can even go too far, leaving you OB long. I think it's a great starting hole because you almost kind of want to juice it for the confidence to hit the gap, but you have to have touch and distance control to do well on the course. And if you look at this event in the past and look at some of the players on the rounds and coverage, you can tell this course doesn't let you get started off very easy, and it's extremely possible to be 6 or 7 holes into the round and really have not gotten anything going yet, which is tough because the back 9 is where a lot of just very tough, long, narrow holes exist. So you get done with that first par 3, you think, okay, great, and then hole 2 changes everything on you, introducing a near 1,000-foot par 5, requiring ideal placement shots before you have a third shot into the woods to get the birdie. And there's an area of kind of hazard in the middle, which is really great because if you land in that hazard, you take the stroke, but you get to keep playing from where you're at. There's no discussion of where you went out of bounds and all that kind of stuff. It saves a lot of time, and because of how the hazard is created, you're still able to, if you go in the hazard off the tee, you're now throwing 3, you can still have a mountainous third shot and get yourself in position to do good things on the hole. So the hole kind of tempts you into aggressive play and continues to tempt you into aggressive play. So I'll be curious to see how many players are going for it, who's throwing the big bombs. It'll be a lot of fun to watch drives on hole 2 during the weekend. I won't showcase a specific hole here, but holes 3 through 6 definitely have a very important concept altogether, and that's that they're very tight gaps with narrow fairways, but they're all incredibly fair. A lot of the pros whose videos I've watched regarding the practice rounds have talked about how if you throw a good shot, you're likely to be fine, and if you throw a bad shot, you're going to be punished because the gaps are wide enough that they're fair, they're clean, so you can hit them and not have to worry about errant trees in the middle of a lot of them. It's going to be a tough stretch of that course. Hole 7 is the next one I want to showcase, which is just a monstrous par 3, nearly 500 feet long for the MPO and a par 4 for the FPO. And I think this represents a very common trope for the tour, where they take a super long par 3 that turns into a 4 for the ladies. And typically you see those holes end up being the ones with very small score separation and a par rate above 75% for the MPO field, leaving it kind of boring and forgettable. But this hole doesn't really work like that. At least I don't think it's going to work like that, because you have to go from the open into the woods, carry through the woods a bit, and there are multiple areas of trouble with a Mando on the right and OB in different spots. I could expect to see it play better than most other holes that have the same kind of circumstances with the distance and the par parameters. As players are going to try to bite off more than they can chew, they're going to leave themselves in some tough positions. And even if you lay up short off your tee shot, that shot into the woods is not easy. So I think it's going to play much harder than holes of a similar vibe at other places on tour. Hole 9 kind of harkens back to hole 1 with a very similar tee shot going in the opposite direction. So you were throwing like a backhand hyzer through that one. This time you're going to want to have a nice big forehand hyzer or a lefty backhand. But the difference is it's a par 4 requiring a more touchy shot into a wooded green protected by a hazard area. And this hole should really force some decision making on the second shot, should make things interesting as they close out the first half of the round. Hole 10 is an island in the woods. Yep, you heard that right, an island in the woods. It is really cool. It's defined by a brick wall that stands a couple feet off the ground, preventing things from just sliding into the green. And it's just really unique, and I think it's super well executed. There's even trees growing on the island. There's a drop zone, and I know typically, like we talked about last week, we don't like drop zone putts on the green to save par. However, this is a bit different because it sits about 50 plus feet back from the basket, and it's aimed directly at the OB behind the basket, which is only like 10 or 12 feet past the basket. So it's not some gimme putt from 40 feet you can save your par. It's actually going to be a tough one, and if you run it, you could be in an even worse circumstance by setting yourself up to take a bigger number. Once again, the course kind of does this thing to us where they give us the shorter par 3, a little bit more technical, and then they hit us in the jaw with a monster of a hole. And that's what hole 12 is. It's a brand new par 5 sitting at over 1,100 feet in length. And it kind of feels like they're trying to memorialize this right next to hole 12 at Northwood Black, or maybe hole 6 at New London last year. It's going to be brutal. And you might as well just call this hole Denny's, because people are going to be scrambling everywhere. We're going to see, the best part is with a lot of the holes in this course, especially this one, you kind of have a gap off the tee that makes the most sense. But when you get partway through the hole, you kind of find yourself in a position where it's just like, well, where I land is where I land. I'm going to have to manufacture something from there. So that's kind of what this hole feels like. So we're going to see players who really do a good job of being creative, I think, find a lot of success on this hole and just this course anywhere, which is kind of what we see when you look at the rest of the course with holes 13 through 18, which are kind of more of the same. They're long, they're narrow, they're specific. There are 3 700-foot par 4s on the back half of this course. So there's an 1,100-foot par 5, 3 700-plus foot par 4s. It's a long back 9. It's very, very grueling, and you're going to see a lot of players who pick up some good strokes in the first half of the round end up losing out on those strokes in the second half. So I think what we're going to have to see a lot is players are going to have to score well in the front half, get birdies where they can on the back, but really protect their score on the back 9. So what can we learn by looking at these holes? I think the players who are going to succeed this weekend are going to be good at 3 specific things. First, they're going to be good at gap hitting without the need for width. And what I mean by that is, there's a big argument of like, what's better, the flex shot, the flip up to flat, like hyzer flip style shot. And we see a lot of players kind of going to that flex line now, but sometimes with the flex line, you need a bit more width in the fairway to be able to use all the room available to have your shot flex. But the guys and gals who are throwing the flip up, like hyzer flip shots, don't need as much space. So we're going to have to see people, a great example is like Owen Scoggins, right? She's really, really great at throwing distance, but she has to use a lot of left to right space to be able to create that shot shape for herself. She's not going to have all that kind of room at this course. So I think you're going to really want to see who's going to be able to throw as straight as humanly possible without the need to have a lot of width on both sides of the fairway. Secondly, I think you're going to need to see someone who's going to be successful with scrambling with creativity. There's a lot of places on this course, like I said earlier, where it's sort of like you throw, you see where you're at, and then you have to manufacture something from there. And so we're going to find out who's really good and who's really creative. There's a few players who come to mind when I think about like who knows how to be creative on the course, and might be talking about them here in a minute when we go over our predictions. The last one though is going to be distance control. Now, this is a tough one because I don't think we challenge pros enough on the tour with distance control. And what I mean by that is when you're in the woods throwing down these tunnels and there's like holes with dog legs, it's very clear and evident that some of these holes, there are landing areas where if you're 20 feet long or 20 feet short or 20 feet to the left, it dramatically changes your accessibility to the green for the remainder of the hole. So you have to really control your distance off the tee along with the accuracy through the tunnels. So combining all three of these things, you're going to need some really, really savvy players when it comes to playing in the woods. Also, if we take a look at the weather for the weekend, it's looking a little cold and rainy tomorrow. And for Saturday, we see the rain clears a little bit, but the wind picks up to, 17, 18 miles per hour. And then on Sunday, aside from the wind, it looks like it's going to be the best day of the three. So we should see progressively better scoring throughout the weekend as players both get better at the course and as the weather improves. Looking at my predictions for the event, we're going to start with the FPO field. The field is definitely weaker without the Euro squad present. I mean, there are a few European players there, but we're still missing Kristen, Evelina, Hannah, and Silva. And that definitely is very impactful in the field. But coming in third place, I've got Missy Gannon. I think she's going to ride the wave for a bit, coming off of the big win at the major. She's very consistent. She's poised to do well. The distance might be a bit much for her here, but she's still going to podium. I think she clearly has an easy route to getting to the top three. I could see her doing better than the top three, but I'm going to have Missy Gannon at third place. Coming in at second for me, I've got Kat Murch here. She has a lot of experience on this course, having taken down a win here before when it was a Silver Series event, and there was a decent field when that happened. But she's also one of only 3 players on tour this year who's played more than 3 events and not finished outside the top 10. The only other 2 are Kristen and Holland. So I think she's due for a solid performance, and I think she's going to put up a really good one here. She's a bit creative when she needs to be. She's got distance. She can definitely hit shots through the woods. I'd love to see her win the whole thing, but I feel like podium and second place is a great place for her. And coming in first place for me, it's got to be Holland Hanley. She's a powerhouse this season. Her worst finish is 5th place, but otherwise she's been top 3 all season long. She's going to take down another win here, I think, and just kind of further that narrative that she's Kristen's shadow, that when Kristen's not there, the boogeyman Holland's going to be there, and you still can't get a win anyway. But I think despite that narrative, her time is coming to be number 1 under the sun. And, chances to pick up these types of wins help build those confidence that she needs to take down Kristen when the time matters. Looking at the MPO side of things, I didn't even realize I did this. I'm just seeing this now. I took a major winner for the FPO division and I put them coming in third, and I did the exact same thing for the MPO because in third place I have Isaac Robinson. I mean, I think this course looks very backhand friendly. We know Isaac knows how to carve up the woods, and I'm not going to say that the Champs Cup perfectly set up for him to also perform well here as well. Very different courses, but Isaac does have a track record of finishing on the podium after every single major that he's won, indicating that he does have some streakiness around majors. And so putting him on the podium here seems pretty safe to do. But I think he gets very close and just can't clinch it down the stretch. Number 2, I've got Niklas Antila. Niklas in the Woods has proven to be very, very effective this year with the Open at Austin, and he also played super well at Music City Open. He's got 2 wins, and that can't be understated. And I think he's just, he didn't have the best Champs Cup, but he's primed to come out and shoot a solid event. He got the win here at the Q Series, even though, half the course did change a little bit. I think Niklas is one of the better players in the woods, very powerful, very good touch on his backhands, and he's going to do really, really well on this course. And coming in at number 1, I think it's time. We've waited long enough. He's got all the shots. We know he's incredible at scrambling when he needs to. I think Ricky Wysocki is going to pick up his first win of the season. I just feel it, like the song says, I feel it in my bones. It's Ricky's time to shine. I just see him taking down a win here. Be super excited to see it, but I've got Ricky number 1 at the Cascade Challenge. All right, to round out this kind of abbreviated show for you, which, by the way, I had a few more notes, I had a lot more things to add, but because I'm kind of recording this last minute to get an episode out for you, I had to speed it up a little bit. My apologies to all of you out there. I'd love to add more graphics and make this a lot, more beautiful, but to me, getting an episode out for you before the event is more beneficial than holding off and having a bunch of bells and whistles. Next week, I've got I figured out my schedule a bit. We're going to be back to our regularly scheduled programming on Wednesday nights next week, and I've got a lot of fun things planned for that one. We're going to cover a bunch of stuff, and I'm going to make it up for all these shorter episodes recently with a nice banger of an episode next week. But let's close out today's episode with our picks for Hold My Bag. If you don't know, Hold My Bag is a really, really awesome way of playing some, fantasy style disc golf where you go on, it's just holdmybag.com. Go check it out. You get to pick players from different tiers based upon their current ranking positions. You pick who you think is going to finish the best. You compete against thousands of people who play this game. And guess what? Even though it is free to enter, you can still win like $100 gift card or other gift cards. And they just launched a pay-to-play version, which you have to be in the correct state to do that. But really cool to see what those guys are doing. They're really getting involved over on the tour. They have a lot of players that they're kind of sponsoring and they're partnering with. Love to see it. Go play Hold My Bag. Sign up. Tell me in the comments who you're picking for Hold My Bag, and let's see how you do versus me. And if we get enough people, I keep saying this, it's going to happen someday. If we get enough people, I'll start a Hold My Bag league over there for Understable Discourse, and we'll duke it out week after week, and maybe I'll put up a sweet prize for the winner. But my picks for this week, without further ado, no further gilding the lily, we have in tier number 1, I've got Ricky Wysocki. I said he was going to win the event. I truly believe that. I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Ricky has the win here. In tier 2, there's a lot of good players in tier 2. I'm going with Ezra Robinson. I think it's his time to come back. When I think about like the difficulty of the Supreme Flight Open, I think this kind of harkens a little bit there, and I just see Ezra performing pretty well on this course. In tier 3, I got Eagle McMahon. All right, he's starting to make that comeback. He's starting to look like some good Eagle going on. And so I'm going with Eagle McMahon at this one. I think he still has a little bit yet to get back to that, it's debatable, and I don't want to get into it too much here, whether or not Eagle will ever return to the Eagle that we once saw. I have opinions on that that I'll share at a different time. But I have Eagle McMahon top of tier 3 for this weekend. Now, tier 4 is always fun because you've got the players who perform pretty solid, but kind of they're not getting wins. There's some really great players in here, and some players who were in tier 5 who are now in tier 4. That shakes things up a little bit. I got Casey White. When I think about like carving up the woods and tough shots, I just see Casey doing really well with that kind of thing. And so I got Casey White in tier 4. But going over to tier 5. Tier 5 is emptied out a little bit because we had some people move up into tier 4, and there's some players who aren't playing the event. So tier 5 is kind of small this week. And looking at it down the line, I'm like, I'm not sure. And then that's where I saw him, the veteran himself. And, it's not just because I appear on his show. I'm going to go with Paul Ulibarri. Mr. Yuli, I think, is going to play really, really well this weekend and get the job done for tier 5. I think a lot of people are going to end up picking Yuli, so we'll see how it goes. But hey, listen, those are my picks for Hold My Bag. We'll see how we do. Next week, I'll tell you if I made good picks, if I made bad picks, or somewhere in the middle. But that's it for our short episode this week. I hope you enjoyed it. Please go watch the Cascade Challenge. It's going to be a great event. I'm really excited to see these events coming on the tour for their first ever Elite Series, and we show a lot of support. We get to keep these great events. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy watching some disc golf. If you like what you saw today, please make sure to leave a like for the video, subscribe. It's a great way to help support the growth of this channel and do all that kind of stuff. And in the comments section down below, put who you think is going to win this weekend. Who's taking down the win in the FPO division and the MPO division. Honestly, FPO is a bit tighter, but the MPO, kind of a toss-up. So who do you got? Who's taking it down? Until next time, this is Understable Discourse. I'm Gary. Talk to you later.